Hello and welcome to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson and produced in the studios of WRMI Shortwave in Okeechobee, Florida. I'm Jeff White. Today on Wavescan, amidst the rubber plantations in Malaysia, the BBC Tebrau. International Radio Serbia may soon leave shortwave. And our Australian DX report, as well as, of course, our QSL of the week. During the past 3/4 of a century, the BBC Far Eastern Relay Station has been on the air on shortwave from 4 consecutive locations: Jurong, Singapore; Ekala, Ceylon; Tebrau, Malaysia, and back again to Singapore, again at Kranji. In our program today, Ray Robinson relates the very interesting story about their 30-year venture amidst the rubber plantations and jungles at the southern edge of the Malay Peninsula.
Hi, Jeff. Quite soon after the end of World War II in Asia, the BBC in London sent Mr. F.C. McLean on a preliminary search for a suitable location for a relay station in the Malay Peninsula. At the time, the BBC was on the air from the new shortwave station that had been constructed at Jurong on Singapore Island during the Japanese occupation. Initially, the BBC was interested in enlarging the Jurong station with the installation of high-powered transmitters and tall antenna masts. However, the Malay government, with Singapore as the capital city at the time, was planning a huge international airport nearby, and tall towers could not be permitted. Thus, the BBC needed to look elsewhere for their big new shortwave station, and they chose the nearby Malay Peninsula. In the meantime, they took out a temporary relay via the new shortwave station that had recently been opened at Ekala in Ceylon. In July 1947, a team of 3 from the BBC in London finally chose the Tebrau site as the most suitable of the various possible venues they had visited. Their new estate of 450 acres of jungle and rubber tree plantations had no access road, nor any ambient infrastructure, and there were still some leftover Japanese ammunition dumps in the area. The design for this new shortwave station was quite similar to the recently constructed Ekala station in Ceylon, and the original complement of electronic equipment at Tebrau would include 6 transmitters and 20 antenna systems. In addition, it was necessary to build up a self-contained set of housing and amenities, including recreational facilities for all of the staff who would be employed at the station. Work on this massive new radio station and all of its additional accessories began quite quickly, and the installation of electronic equipment in the transmitter building began in mid-1950. At this stage, 2 transmitters at 100 kilowatts each were installed. They had both served the BBC at different locations in the United Kingdom during the conflict in Europe, at Start Point in England and at Lisnaghavi in Northern Ireland. In order to safeguard the BBC's capability of international radio coverage during the war, these 2 widely separated shortwave stations had been constructed as alternatives to the huge, well-known station at Daventry, just in case that one should be damaged in an aerial attack. The first transmitter, a 100 kilowatt Marconi model number SWB-18, was co-sited with a medium wave station located at Start Point on the south coast of England. This transmitter had been under construction for an unstated foreign government, but when the war broke out it was taken over for use by the BBC at Start Point. This shortwave transmitter was on the air on only one frequency, 6075 kHz, under the call sign GRR. The informative book BBC Engineering tells us that usage of this transmitter was terminated at the end of 1945, and it was, quote, placed under dust sheets, unquote. Over at Lisnaghavi near Belfast, another Marconi model SWB-18 100 kilowatt transmitter had also been co-sited with a medium wave transmitter and had been inaugurated on November the 20th, 1941 under the call sign GRW. This unit was also on the air on only one channel, variously listed as either 6140 or 6145 kHz. Interestingly, an international radio monitor in Australia noted that both units, GRR and GRW, were heard in team. That is, they carried parallel programming. The station in Northern Ireland was silenced on May 26, 1946, and the same book, BBC Engineering, states that it was put under care and maintenance. The events of radio history suggest to us that it was these two transmitters that were duly reinstalled in the new BBC station at Tabrau in Malaya. The first was reactivated in December 1950, and the second was reactivated a month later in January of the following year, 1951. In addition, 4 new 7.5 kilowatt Marconi transmitters, model SWB-11E, were installed at Tabrau. At least some of these units were placed in service on May 13, 1951, when program relays for various language areas of Asia were transferred from BBC Ekala, Ceylon, to BBC Tabrau, Malaya. Power for the Tabrau station was generated locally with 3 huge diesel engines. The feeder lines from the transmitters to the antenna systems were clustered more than a mile long, and they gave the appearance of a huge highway running through the dense forest of jungle trees. Some 20 years later, in the early 1970s, a modernization plan was implemented at Tabrau, and the 4 low-power transmitters at 7.5 kilowatts were removed. They were replaced by 4 100 kilowatt and 4 250 kilowatt transmitters. The 2 older 100 kilowatt units were still retained, though they were no longer included in official lists. When the time approached for the expiration of the license for the station, it became clear that it would be necessary for the BBC Far Eastern Relay Station to move once again. All 8 of the new transmitters were moved consecutively to a new station at Kranji on the island of Singapore, and the Tabrau station was finally closed on Sunday, March 18, 1979. The BBC Far Eastern Relay Station at Tabrau was heard far and wide during its 30 years of service, and yes, in its earlier years of on-air activity, special QSL cards verifying the reception of the station were issued from the BBC headquarters in London. In addition, for those who were official BBC monitors, the BBC would type in brief QSL details using one of their standard acknowledgement cards. Next in this story of the BBC Far Eastern Relay Station, we'll pick up the events once again as they occurred on the island of Singapore some 35 years ago. And you'll hear this information here in Wavescan on another occasion sometime soon.
You're listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. Send your comments and reception reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the United States. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the USA. Or you can email us at wavescan@awr.org. Our email once again, wavescan@awr.org.
This is the International Radio Service speaking, and you're listening to our English service broadcast, into which you can tune on 6,100 kHz in Europe, as well on 6,190 kHz in the United States. We would like to welcome you to our Belgrade studios, and as usual, we begin the broadcast with the latest news. On this day, 2 years ago, the first agreement was signed on the principles of the normalization of relations.
Well, there you heard an English broadcast from International Radio Serbia. Well, it was announced that International Radio Serbia may be closed altogether on June 30th, 2015, after 79 years of broadcasting. This news comes to us from various sources. In the Bulgarian DX blog, it has this announcement and mentions the English broadcasts that you may want to tune into before June 30th if you want to hear International Radio Serbia on the air and perhaps request a QSL card, send a reception report. The three English broadcasts are as follows: 1830 to 1900 UTC on 6100 kilohertz. That is to Western Europe in English. Also 2100 to 2130 UTC on 6100 kilohertz to Western Europe in English as well. To North America, they're on at midnight 30 to 0100 UTC on 9685 kilohertz. To North America in English, that is Tuesday through Saturday UTC, Monday through Friday nights in North America. Now, it says 9685 kilohertz, but as you heard the announcement there, mentioned 6190, so maybe you better try both of those. We have some additional information on this situation now from International Radio Serbia itself on their website, which is voiceofserbia.org. It says that more than 70 employees of Radio Yugoslavia, International Radio Serbia, as they call it nowadays, have had a peaceful protest in front of the Serbian government building. This was datelined April 16th. The protest due to the announced disbanding of the media house that has been working for 79 years and broadcasting in 12 languages. The representatives of the employees have asked for a reception and submitted a letter to the Prime Minister, Aleksandar Vučić, which points to the detrimental effects of shutting down this media to the interest of the Republic of Serbia, as well as stressing the unfortunate situation for the employees who will lose their jobs and without severance pay. If no reaction is shown from the government or the ministry, another protest is scheduled for the following week. The media strategy and the new law on public information envisage the withdrawal of the state from ownership in the media and their direct financing. Contrary to the earlier announcements, no option of transformation or rationalization has been offered to Radio Yugoslavia, International Radio Serbia, even though the law identifies the public interest of informing the world public about events in Serbia. The protest was covered by numerous other media outlets in Serbia. The director of International Radio Serbia, Milorad Vujovic, has assessed it is intolerable to shut down on July 1st the only state service for informing the international public about events in Serbia in 11 world languages, as it has been doing for 79 years. This kind of behavior is unacceptable because there is the possibility within the public service and in line with the law on public media services to let our radio keep doing its job, Vujovic told the press. He says, putting out the only shortwave radio station in the country, turning it off, whose programs are heard worldwide, would represent a great loss to the promotion of Serbia and hence leaving a gap in the information of the world public and the Serbian diaspora. Vujovic has pointed out that opposite trends are noted in the region, and everyone strives to attain the greatest possible impact on public opinion in the world. And he adds that 20 countries of the EU also have this kind of world service. The director of International Radio Serbia stated it is still uncertain what will happen to the employees, but there is trepidation that all 96 of them will be rendered jobless, without any severance pay or compensation.
Говорит Международное радио Сербия. Начинаем нашу получасовую передачу на русском языке, которая выходит в эфир ежедневно на коротких волнах 6100 килогерц.
Well, International Radio Serbia is the only shortwave radio station in the country broadcasting its programs to all parts of the world in 12 languages, in Serbian for the diaspora, as well as in English, French, German, Russian, Spanish, Arabic, Albanian, Greek, Italian, Hungarian, and Chinese. We just heard a Russian broadcast there. International Radio Serbia broadcasts daily on shortwave, 24 hours a day via satellite also in Serbian and 11 foreign languages. In foreign languages, all of these programs are broadcast in half-hour shows. International Radio Serbia, according to its website, is one of the oldest shortwave radio stations and was founded 6 years before the Voice of America. The broadcasting of the program for foreign countries from this region started on March 8, 1936, in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Of course, it was previously known as Radio Yugoslavia. In conditions of constant financial strains, it has not been easy to carry out our tasks in the previous years, says the website. Outdated and worn technical equipment, lack of funds for renewal, and lack of understanding for the importance of informing the foreign public and the Serbian diaspora by shortwave have considerably slowed down the realization of the development plan of International Radio Serbia. With considerable efforts during 2007, they renewed their strong transmitters in the shortwave center at Bijeljina and had begun broadcasting programs over satellite and created a new internet presentation. Owing to this, International Radio Serbia once again returned to its old slogan, "If you cannot hear us, then that must be the end of the world," which was familiar for many years to many listeners throughout the world. Well, apparently, according to these reports, it is not only going off of shortwave, it also would not continue on internet or satellite either, because the whole organization, International Radio Serbia, would be shut down. We'll keep you up to date on developments with that and see what happens between now and June 30th.
This is the International Radio of Serbia. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
On a recent edition of Wavescan, we told you about the upcoming National Association of Shortwave Broadcasters 25th anniversary meeting to take place in Washington, D.C. on May 21st and 22nd. We gave you an outline of some of the events to take place on the first day, May 21st. Well, since then, another item has been added, a presentation about the history of shortwave broadcasting in France by Jérôme Irigoyen of Télédiffusion de France, TDF, which operates the big Issoudun transmitter site in France. Now, looking at the agenda for the second day of the meeting, Friday, May 22nd, things will begin at 9 a.m. with an update on Digital Radio Mondiale by Calvin Carter of Continental Electronics and Christopher Rumbaugh of the DRM North America Yahoo Group. Gerhard Straub of the U.S. International Broadcasting Bureau, which operates the Voice of America and its affiliated stations, will give an IBB engineering update. AJ Janacek of Radio Free Asia will talk about using the Ubuntu operating system for radio applications. Dr. Kim Elliott of the IBB will talk about shortwave audience research, just who listens to shortwave radio, and his radiogram program on the Voice of America. Also on the NASB agenda for Friday, May 22nd, John Taylor and Ray Robinson of shortwave station KVOH in Los Angeles will tell about their new venture with the Voice of Hope in Africa and Israel. After lunch at a Chinese restaurant around the corner from Radio Free Asia, the NASB meeting will continue in the afternoon with a discussion about NASB matters such as updating the association's website, the location of the 2016 annual meeting, the 25th anniversary QSL for listeners of NASB member stations, and a possible NASB listeners meeting in Australia. You can find complete information about the NASB 2015 annual meeting on the website, www.shortwave.org. Just click on Annual Meeting. And several of the persons that you hear regularly here on Wavescan will be present there in Washington. We hope many of you will be there as well. The dates, again, May 21st and 22nd in Washington, D.C. at the headquarters of Radio Free Asia. Get all the details at www.shortwave.org and then click on Annual Meeting. Okay, next on Wavescan today, let's go to Australia. Here's Bob Padula with his April DX report.
Greetings to shortwave enthusiasts around the world. This is Bob Padula in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, with another edition of the Australian DX Report. These magazines provide news of shortwave broadcasting stations, monitoring summaries, propagation news, and other information concerning world international broadcasting. As I start to remind you that full detail QSLs are available for correct reports received for these episodes. The address will be given at the end of the program. And to note that all times, days and dates given in our episodes are in UTC, and we use the 24-hour time system. The episodes are compiled from resources made available by the Electronic DXpress Radio Monitoring Association, which is based here in Melbourne.
We begin our program this week with information from the Ionospheric Prediction Service in Sydney, New South Wales, here in Australia. This is a summary of the solar forecast report, and we note that this information indicates that the 10.7 centimetre solar radio flux has decreased even further. It's now down to 110, and the daily equivalent smooth sunspot number has fallen to 60. That's 60. And those figures are not expected to increase significantly in the immediate future. So that solar information and geophysical news from the Ionospheric Prediction Service in Sydney, New South Wales in Australia. Now we have some information concerning propagation and monitoring made here in Melbourne. The frequency usage for the initial phase of the new A15 transmission season has stabilised. This is a summary of some notable occupancies made recently in the pre-sunrise period here in Melbourne. That's in the time span 1900 to 1930. These affect broadcasts in the 49 metre band and the 31 metre band. First of all, the 49 metre band, 5995, Radio Liberty from the Lampertheim relay station in Germany in Russian. 6035, the Voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Russian, at signing on at 1920. And 6155, Radio Belarus from Minsk, the domestic service. And 6155 also at the same time, India, co-channel interference from the Minsk station. Then 31 metre band, 9500, Transworld Radio Manzini in Swaziland with English. 9515, China Radio International from China transmitting station in Czech. And another frequency for China, 9525, from transmitting site near Beijing in Russian. And a further frequency for China Radio International, 9765, again from a transmitting site near Beijing in Portuguese. And 9540, Radio Romania International, broadcasting in Spanish. 9685, Radio Cairo in Egypt, transmitting in Russian. And 9755, another frequency for the Voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Italian, signing on at 1925. And 9785, the Voice of Turkey in English, also signing on at 1925. And finally 9890, the Voice of Vietnam from the Wolferton relay station in England, broadcasting in Russian.
I'd just like to remind you that we offer full detail QSL cards showing Australian scenes and wildlife for correct reports received for these broadcasts. We also offer an email QSL service for reports sent via the internet or email. Full details about the QSL service are available at the Electronic DXpress homepage, which is simply edxp.org. So until our next program, this is Bob Padula in Melbourne in Victoria, Australia, wishing you all good listening. Thanks for being with us and Good DX. See you soon.
Thank you, Bob. Back nearly 20 years ago, William Matthews in Columbus, Ohio, was on the air with a regular DX report for both Adventist World Radio and also Radio Korea International. On the occasion of the 200th edition of his DX report over Radio Korea International, arrangements were made for a relay of the AWR DX program Wavescan via the RKI network of shortwave stations in South Korea. For the occasion, AWR obtained a quantity of QSL cards that had been previously in use by the Korean language Voice of Prophecy in Seoul to verify their broadcasts over Adventist World Radio. These full-color picture cards depicted tourist scenes in South Korea, and they were duly rubber-stamped in honor of the occasion. Christian Guibaudot in France heard the one-day-only AWR RKI broadcasts over the Radio Korea International transmitter at Kimjae in South Korea with 250 kilowatts on 6480 kilohertz. His QSL card showed a temple scene in South Korea. We end today with Russian choir music from the Tambov Church in southwestern Russia, sent to us by Ian Lightbody in Ontario. Thanks for listening to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio, researched and written in Indianapolis by Adrian Peterson. Next week, Through the Years with Shortwave WYFR, Part 15, our Australian DX report, and our QSL of the week will be the final broadcast from a large shortwave station. Several QSL cards are available for your reports on Wavescan. Send your reports for AWR and KSDA broadcasts to Wavescan to the AWR address in Indianapolis, which we'll mention in a moment, and also to the station your radio is tuned to, WRMI or WWCR or KVOH, or to the AWR relay stations that carry Wavescan. Remember, too, you can send a reception report to the DX reporters when their segment is on the air here in Wavescan. Those reports are from Japan, Bangladesh, the Philippines, Australia, and India. They will verify with their own colorful QSL card. Return postage and an address label are always appreciated. Our Wavescan address is Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. Our email address is wavescan@awr.org. That's wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI in Okeechobee, Florida. Till next week, good listening, everyone.